What's up everybody? In this tutorial I'm going to teach you how to make a character jump using the Python pygame sprites. Okay, so we are going to use pygame, but specifically with pygame sprite. Anytime you want to use the pygame module, you have to first do import it. So I'm first going to import pygame. After importing pygame, the first thing you have to do is to initialize pygame, right? Now I always like to set a variable for the screen. So screen is equal to pygame dot display dot, and then we set mod. And for the sake of this tutorial, I'm going to use a width of 500 pixels and then 400 pixels for the height. Right after this, I'm going to make a clock variable just to time everything. So clock is equal to pygame dot time dot clock. Perfect. Now once we are here, the next thing we are going to do is to get a game loop running. So I'm going to make a variable running to be true. Okay, so the run variable is true, and while the running variable continue to remain true, we want to get all the events in pygame.event.get. So for event in pygame.event.get, as we get all the events in pygame, we want to check if there is a quit event. That's the close button is clicked. If event.type equals pygame.quit. If it is pygame.quit, what do you want to do? We want to set our running variable to false. Perfect. Now soon after this, right after our running variable is false, then we want to uninitialize pygame. So pygame.quit. Good. We are good to go. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to update our screen. So first of all, we are going to fill our screen with a green color. If you are on one of the latest versions of pygame, you will be able to use this green without specifying the RGB values like 0, 255 and then 0 for it. And then we do the pygame.display.update. Now let me run this simple code and see what we are getting right now. So we are supposed to get a green screen like this. Perfect. The next thing I'm going to do is to draw a ground. So I'm going to use a rectangle for the ground. So pygame.draw.rect, and the rectangle is going to be on the screen with let's say, let me give it a brown color, and then I'm going to give the coordinates. It's going to start from 0 as the X position. The Y position is going to be 300. The width is going to be, we use 500 for the width of the screen, and then the height is going to be 100 pixels. Let me check it out. Good, we have gotten our ground over here. The next thing I'm going to do is to make the classes. So I'm going to use class. The class is going to be called the player class, and this player is going to take the properties of a pygame sprite. So pygame.sprite.sprite. Don't forget the second sprite is capital S. Then we initialize our player class. So self initialization, and then we super initialize it. So super dot init. We initialize it properly for it to get all the properties and attributes of the pygame sprite. Right after this, every pygame sprite is supposed to have an image. So since I'm not going to use an image right now, so I'm going to use a pygame surface for it. Pygame.capital S, don't forget, capital S surface for it, and the surface is, I'm going to give it a 50 pixels width and then 50 pixels height for our player variable. And then this rectangle, that's the self.rect, is equal to pygame dot I'm just going to grab the rectangle of the image, so self.image dot, and then we get a rectangle of it. After getting the rectangle, we set the self.x, the x position, so self.rect dot x, and then I'm going to set it to the x position. I'm going to use 100 for it, and then the y position, self.rect dot y, I'm going to use let me check it. I think 250 will be fine for me. Now the next thing we are going to do is to make an instance of the player class. So I'm going to make a player object over here, and then I'm going to assign it to a player. Perfect. Now the next thing I'm going to do is to make a group for the players, as if you have been using pygame sprite, you know. So I'm going to do player group. So player group is going to be pygame dot sprite dot group. Perfect. When we get this done, and then the next thing is to add the player to the player group. So pygame dot add the player group dot add, and then we want to add player variable. The next thing we have to do is to draw our variable to the screen. So you see the player group dot draw on the screen. You give it the screen variable inside over here. Let me run it. Perfect. Now this is our player object with a dark color over here. I'm going to change the dark color to yellow. So over here up in the player code, you say self.image, the image.fill, and then as I said, if you are in one of the latest versions of pygame, you just have to put in yellow over here, else you have to specify the RGB values for it. Cool. So I've gotten it right away. This is a tutorial about jumping of a character, right, of our yellow box character over here. Anytime we hear of jumping, as you jump as a human being, you are supposed to be brought down by something called gravity in physics. So gravity, we know on this earth the average is 10 meters per second. So I'm going to use the 10 meters per second over here. So gravity is 10 meters per second. And then what I'm going to do is, as our player is standing over there, it is having a y velocity of 0. So the y velocity is 0. Now I'm going to make a function for a method for our player class, and then this is going to be jump. Whenever we want it to jump, we want to set the y velocity to negative 50 meters per second. It is just a unit as an integer, negative 50, but we assume that it is negative 50 meters per second. Good. Every sprite object has an update method attached to it. We are going to change the y position to self.rect.y. We are going to add the self.y velocity to it, and before that we say self.rect.y, and before that the y velocity, we have to, the gravity must be acting on it, so the y velocity plus equals gravity. So this should work out. You shouldn't be doing anything right now. So before, we have to check if our player self.rect.y is greater than 250 due to the position of it on the y coordinate, and then we want to set it to .y, and then we want to set it to 250 pixels back. Let me check it out. So now it's stuck over there. So what we have to do is to implement this one. So anytime our player jumps, we are going to use the space bar for it. So if event type equals pygame dot key down. If there is a key down event, out of that key down event, we want to check if event dot button or event dot key, the key is pygame dot key space, then what are we going to do? If the event we are getting is a space bar key down, what we want to say is player dot jump, and we want our player variable to jump. This should work out. Everything should be complete at this point. So just going to run it. Okay, now let me press the space bar. Perfect, it worked out perfectly. So anytime you want our variable to jump, you just press the space bar. On pressing the space bar, it changes the y velocity to -15, that it will be going upward, and then the gravity also acts on it to bring it back to its initial state. As it gets to 250 pixels, then it gets stuck over there. So we can just be jumping more than once. But if you don't want your character for a game like the Chrome Dino, the Dino in the Chrome when you don't have internet connection, it is programmed just such that it doesn't jump twice like this. So for our character right now, it can jump twice, thrice, it can jump off the screen. And so in that case, we have to have a variable to be controlling the jumping of our character. So I'm just going to add another attribute called jumped, just to check if our player variable has jumped, and initially it is false. Once we press on the space bar, we just want to change it to true. So on jumping, we say let's change it to true. After changing this to true, then when the jump method is initiated, it will be assigned that, oh, it has jumped, so the jump variable will be true. And then once it is greater than 250 pixels, our jump variable should be set back to its initial position, that false. We go to the event loop, and then inside this event we have to check if our player dot jump variable is true or false. Let me just use this. If not player dot jump, if the player has not jumped, then we want the player to jump. So this will take all the stress away. So if not player dot jump, player dot jump. Let me run it. So as I press the space bar, it will jump, but when it is in the air and I try to press the space bar again, it's not going to work. So that's it for this tutorial. I think everything should work out. So here is all where the logic goes. When it is jumping, we set the y velocity to -50. As it is at -50, we want the gravity to be acting on it as 10 meters per second, as we did it over here. And then as it acts on it, it will get to the same point with the ground. When it is at the position where it touches the ground, we want to set it, the y position, to be touching the ground, just like that, and then we set the jump variable to false. So when we run it, you get everything perfect. That is all for this video. Thank you for watching. Here is the end of this session. If you have any question, let me know in the comment section. Give this video a thumbs up if you find it helpful. Thanks for watching.